Steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs! Sideline!
Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it! Strap yourself in and get ready.
Hey, here we go!
The leaders in fantasy football are incoming, giving you the ultimate insight to help you win your leagues and dominate your mates. You're now listening to the Insight NFL Show with your hosts, Guns and Maverick.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go!
Let's go! Go!
All right, hello and welcome to the Insight NFL podcast. I'm your host Nathan from SuperCoach Guns, and with me, as always, is Matt, also known as the NFL Maverick. Matt, how are you going?
Good, mate. Got some upgraded equipment here from the boys. They've invested into me, so looks like I'm sticking around for the long term.
Yes, no, it's they've been kind enough to send us some microphones and that, and I've got a webcam installed, which is, it's not as pixelated as what I was back early on, so that's good stuff. Well, let's dive straight into the news. Now, it's very Patriots themed today because they're the only team that's nice enough to give us anything to talk about. First thing, Ramondre Stevenson. He signed a 4-year, $48 million deal with the Patriots, of course. That places him, I think, in the top 5 or 6 highest paid running backs in the league. And for someone who wouldn't be even above average as an NFL running back, that's well overs, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't like it at all. This would never have happened under the Bill Belichick era. So not too sure what they're thinking now. He would never pay a running back. Never did. But yeah, I mean, they're not really paying anyone, so it's sort of a bit of a whatever to a degree. But it's a 4-year contract with a fairly high guarantee. So for a running back who's maybe top 20, it's a massive overpay.
Yeah, and look, is that his last contract as a starting NFL running back? Probably, just because of, how the running back market is and the fact that he's not really that good of a player. He's got his payday, so well done for him. But that's probably it for him after this. And then I suppose the other news is Demario Douglas. He's been apparently the most impressive receiver at Patriots camp this year. So he's going at around 145 at his ADP right now. And for a wide receiver one, like any wide receiver one's going to put up close to 1,000 yards in a season if they stay fully fit. So he's absolutely value at a 145 ADP, which translates into a late 12th round pick in a 12-man league and I suppose a 14th, 15th round pick in a 10-man league. So, I think that's pretty good going. What are your thoughts? Would you be drafting him at that value?
That's extreme value. I think it screams value. And to be fair, if you get him that late, he doesn't come up, then who cares? You can jump into the waivers and you can pick up someone else. It doesn't really matter at all. But this is where the other part of it comes into. If he starts, if he has 6 catches, 70 yards and a touchdown at 19 points, and suddenly he's nearly in your starting lineup. So if he can carve out a role where he's consistent, then yeah, it's just where you get your value. So I love where he's going, and I expect him to probably go a bit higher once the draft season actually comes along, but not by too much.
Yeah, and look, if he finds a way to get into the top 100 in ADP, then he's a no-go because it's the Patriots. But if he's going where he is right now, yeah, I'm all over him. Even if he's at 120, I'd be drafting him, to be honest, just because he's their youngest and probably best wide receiver on their roster. Well, not the youngest, I suppose, but one of the youngest starting wide receivers on their roster. Yeah, he's pretty good going. Now, it's good that that's nice and short, the news, because we've got a jam-packed episode today. We're going to have a go at getting through all of the running backs in this episode. Um, we've broken it down into tiers. The first tier has 3 players on it. No prizes for guessing who those 3 players are. We'll start out with the first one here, Christian McCaffrey. I think you and I can both agree he will, barring injury, he finishes as the RB1 yet again. He's one of the best pure runners of the football. Uh, he's the best pass catching back in the league. Um, he's playing for one of the best offenses in the league, and you know the scheme that they use is very running back friendly. It all points towards Christian McCaffrey backing up his efforts from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible what he did last year. And to be fair, we really probably did see the best Christian McCaffrey of his career. I could actually see him getting better next year, which is even crazier in itself. Let's say that offensive line which was ranked 18th last year. If that offensive line does get better, and it's already solid, might I add, it
Yeah,
is solid. But if it gets better, his scores will just go up. He had 21 touchdowns last year, passing and receiving. There's 67 receptions as well. So if he can get an upward tick in all those categories, which I think is possible, um, why can't he finish as, well, probably the number one overall player?
yeah. Um, no, he's a freak to put it politely. He's so much better than the rest of these running back contingent here, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a peak Christian McCaffrey in his prime yet again. Um, Now this next position, the RB2, this is where we differ. I'm very much Team Bijan. You're very much Team Brees Hall, that is, of course, and Bijan Robinson. Now, I'll give my points on Bijan, and then you give your points on Brees Hall. So Bijan Robinson for me, I think he's RB2, and I think he's possibly the only running back that can actually push Christian McCaffrey for RB1. He's in one of the more dynamic offenses in the NFL. He's got high level quarterback play. He's got Drake London, Kyle Pitts to divert some attention away from him. And I think, you know, there were flashes last year of what Bijan can do at full flight. And I think now that it's his second year, he's familiar with the NFL. Um, he's not got an insane head coach. And he's got an outstanding offense and a very good O line as well. I think if that all works together, we're looking at a guy that can actually push for the RB1 because he'll have a lot of catches out of the backfield. He's very much a Christian McCaffrey clone. Um, and yeah, for me, he's probably the most exciting prospect in fantasy football, in my opinion. Now, let's hear your thoughts on Brees Hall.
So this one's obviously a bit torn across the whole community. These two, their ADPs, Brees Hall is 7.4, Brees and Bijan's 7.7. So that's also in itself a bit too low. I thought that'd be a lot higher. And I think they should be higher because based off the RB play around the league, if you're not getting a top RB, you're not getting one later on the draft, in my opinion. So these guys realistically should be pushing top 4, top 5 each in one QB leagues. But I've got Brees Hall literally based off that he's going to get better. He's 1 year off his ACL injury that he did 2 years ago now. He's Bijan's strength of schedule for next year is number 1 in the league, and Brees is actually number 4. So they've got pretty good schedules to come in. But the Atlanta offense went through Bijan to get through last year, and it's same with Brees Hall. But the difference for me is that Aaron Rodgers will completely change the offense for Brees Hall. The box was stacked last year. He could not really get through, and he still carved out a massive, massive fantasy score. He had 9 rushing touchdowns, which I think will increase. But he did have 76 receptions. It was probably on the high side. So I expect that to somehow decrease just based off the upgraded QB play. He got a lot of dump offs last year that realistically didn't really pan out to many yardage, and it was nothing plays. But yeah, definitely for me even their offensive line ranked number 12 last year, and that'll be improvement as well. So yeah, Brees Hall for me all day. Bijan's a close second, close third, should I say? He's the RB3 in my opinion. But either way, you can't go wrong with either or, depending on who you like.
Yeah, so obviously to make clear, Bijan and Bristol we both have in the top 3. So we both have McCaffrey 1, and then Matt's got Bristol at 2. I've got Bijan at 2. You know, number 3 is the other guy for each of us. Clearly, those guys are in a tier of their own. That's very hard to dispute for me. I've seen a couple of people try and throw Jonathan Taylor in there. I think Anthony Richardson takes too many rushing touchdowns away from him. It's the same case with Saquon Barkley, and that's why we've put them in the top 5 contenders. So we'll start out with Jonathan Taylor. If I look at Fantasy Pros, they have him as the 4th running back, 4th in running back rankings for 2024. He's overtaken Saquon Barkley in recent times, apparently, for whatever reason. Tell me your thought. What are your thoughts on Jonathan Taylor this season? I don't see as many rushing touchdowns there for him, but he will still comfortably be their 3 down back.
So I'm going to go one step forward here with this one. I'm going to sort of, in a way, skip Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to actually mention Saquon Barkley, who I think should be the RB4 coming off the board. From all reports, Saquon Barkley is actually going to have a Christian McCaffrey-like difference in Philly, which automatically propels him to number 4 for me. Jonathan Taylor's got way too much competition for rushing touchdowns with Anthony Richardson and an offense that will move it. But to be fair, if Indiana are legitimate, they do give Jonathan Taylor more touches in the red zone than Anthony Richardson to protect him. So, yeah, I would probably have Jonathan Taylor at number 5, personally, for myself. And you seriously cannot go wrong with Jonathan Taylor at number 5. And, he's going currently as his ADP is going at 13. So you're probably going to get him late first round in 12-man leagues or early second. He won't be there in the second round, I don't reckon. He probably shouldn't get out of the top 10. He should probably be 10th, 11th in overall 1 QB leagues. And yeah, I just think personally for JT, his injury history has probably killed him for me. That's why I do have Saquon Barkley, even though he has had a knee and an ankle. But yeah, Saquon Barkley for me is in a new offense that's going to be looking for him to propel him to the next level.
Yeah, now I agree. Saquon Barkley for me is clears Jonathan Taylor comfortably. But I will talk a bit on Taylor since you've covered the points of Saquon. Jonathan Taylor, the offense is greatly improved. Last year they lost Anthony Richardson very early on, which hurt them. They were competing for a playoff spot there for the majority of the season under Gardner Minshew at quarterback. So if you put all this together, they've brought in AD Mitchell in the draft. You've got Michael Pittman. You've got Josh Downs. He finished his rookie year really well. He's now a second-year player. He's done another preseason camp. We're doing another preseason camp, I should say. All these factors on their offense really excite me. It's a young offense. It's going to be dynamic. There's definitely going to be plenty of opportunities for Jonathan Taylor. We saw what he did back in, I'm going to say 2022, where he was the RB1. Admittedly, it was the weakest RB1 season we've ever seen, but he did it, and he was the best. So he's shown that he has elite pedigree behind him. Now, in saying that, would I prefer Saquon Barkley every day of the week? Yes, because he plays for a very, very exciting offense. And he's also one of the best athletes in the league. Like, just on a physical profile, Saquon's a freak of nature, athletically speaking. Uh, and when you put him on an elite offense like the Philly Eagles have, yes, Jalen Hurts is going to take some rushing touchdowns away from him. Mate, yes, I understand that. But will the tush push be as effective this year? No, it won't be. So there is the opportunity for Jalen Hurts to not do as many tush pushes, which I think got him something like 11 rushing touchdowns last year. Let's say that number gets cut in half because there's no Jason Kelsey. You know, who are those rushing touchdowns going to go to? Well, they're not going to go in the air. They're definitely going to go to Saquon Barkley. So for me, I agree. Saquon's RB4. I suppose, Matt, do you reckon JT's RB5? Or is a guy like Travis Etienne going to
Yeah,
push into that spot?
nah, it's JT all day. I don't think. Well, with based off Saquon and JT, if they both stay healthy, no one in that team is getting touches off them. I mean, Trey Sermon's their backup at Indiana, and
Kenneth Gainwell?
I can't remember who the backup is at. Yeah, I think it is Kenneth Gainwell. So these guys, outside of pass catching, will not take any sort of rushing touchdowns off them, or any first down carries or anything like that. So um, I do believe that both these options should be going top. Well, should be going first round at a complete minimum in one QB leagues.
Yeah. Um, yeah, very excited for what Saquon Barkley can do at Philadelphia this year. I think, and he gets to play the New York Giants twice a season, which is always good, particularly when they're this bad.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
well,
mm.
I briefly mentioned Travis Etienne. He's probably for me, I think probably the best pass catching back on this list. Um, but
Mm.
he does have a bit of injury risk on him. He missed the whole of his rookie season with a Liz Frank foot fracture, and so he only played his first full NFL season last year. Is that right, or was it the year before? I can't remember. Anyway, he's missed a full season in the NFL. Um, I like Jacksonville's offense this year, but I'm not sure what to feel on Travis Etienne.
So last year he finished number 3 as overall in his position, which obviously had a really good finish. But um, I'm with you. I don't think I would take him at all in the top. Well, I wouldn't reach him in the first round. Um, I mean, even based off last year, he had his numbers in the first 6 weeks were extremely well. Sorry, not even 6. Wow, first 8 weeks were extremely good. Um,
Mm.
After that, it dropped off massively, massively. Like he had weeks where he had 5.4, 7.4, 10.6, 7.9, 4.6. That was after his buy. So I'm not sure if he's capable of handling a full workload for a whole season. But where you get as you said before, his playmaking as a pass catcher is where he makes his money. So I expect his receipt. Oh, he only had 58 catches last year, which is under what I thought. So that could go up, but and one receiving touchdown. So yeah, no fumbles at all, which is outstanding. But yeah, no, I would actually have him probably. Where would you take him? Early second round?
Well, interestingly, his ADP is in a one QB PPR league, redraft, mind you. His ADP is 23.3, so it's late second. At that value, I quite like him, because he's got the
Mm,
receiving upside. Um, he's gone back to back years over 1,000 yards rushing. Wasn't very efficient on the ground last year, though, only 3.8 yards per carry, but he did have 11 touchdowns. So if the offensive line can improve again, I think there's more rushing yards there for him. But at the
Mm,
same time, I think that although the rushing touchdowns may regress negatively, I think the receiving touchdowns rather will go up. I don't think he finishes the season with one receiving touchdown with the pass catcher that he is. So putting all this together, I think his numbers stay relatively the same, possibly go up due to the increase in rushing yards. Um, he did have 73 targets for 58 receptions, which I think is that's a really good spot to be in. If he can hold that sort of production in the passing game, then we have a proper top five candidate here. Um, I don't know. Would you rank him in the top five? I personally would, but I'd rank him fifth.
mm. I'm not sure. I think he might be just outside for me. Um, in my drafts, I try and target wide receiver early if possible, just because there's not many good ones. I'd probably have him at probably between about 6 or 7 off the board. Um, yeah, his yards per carry last year, as you said, were horrendous. It almost ranked through top RBs last year. It was actually second worst of Josh Jacobs. So I don't know if I would. But if they have improvement out of their O line, then that will probably obviously increase. So um, yeah. Do we think that Tank Bigsby gets more looks in next year?
Not for me. I mean, as
Mm,
you said, he finished RB3 and he had the second worst efficiency carrying the football. You know, so if that improves,
mm.
like he really can push. Now, I'll put a hypothetical to you. Let's say there's some sort of wild circumstance where Jonathan Taylor's fallen to the back end of the second round and Travis Etienne ADP stays where it is. If you're picking between Jonathan Taylor and Travis Etienne, who are you taking?
Jonathan Taylor, and it's not close.
Ooh, okay. I believe it to be very close. Uh, I'd probably still take Taylor. I know I just said Etienne's top five. I think it's hard for him to be top five with Taylor and Saquon, and then obviously the big three that we talked about at the start. Um, yeah, I think he's going to push Jonathan Taylor a fair bit this year, but I think he's very reliant on you know that O line play really improving because if it doesn't improve, like we're talking, you know, he's just going to plod along at 4 yards a carry or not even, and he's going to struggle. He will still get to the 60 receptions, but there'll be times where it's looking pretty grim because they've got proper pass catching studs in, you know, I'll try and list them out here. Christian Kirk, uh, Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis, Evan Engram. Like he's really fifth in line for targets, isn't he?
Yeah, you'd think so, but I'll give you one name who I think should go higher than Etienne.
Mhm.
This might be a little bit controversial. I don't think it is at all, but I would take Jimmy Gibbs all day um, over Etienne. You know why?
Why?
It took him weeks and weeks and weeks. Well, not really weeks, but it took him about 5 weeks to get really accustomed to the Detroit offense. And once he got accustomed to the offense, he absolutely flew. Um, the second half of the year, he completely dominated the league. If you drafted him in any leagues, he possibly would have won you a championship the way he was going the second half of the year. How's this for a stat? He ranked number 5 in highest broken tackle percentage, third in highest breakaway yard percentage, and sixth highest yards after contact, and all while facing the 10th highest percentage of stacked boxes in the league. So, I mean, if you get that production out of the first 5, 6 weeks out of him, he's going to be even better. The only
Uh,
downside to Gibbs is he does have Montgomery that's still around.
yeah, that's my point. David Montgomery, like they're still persistent in giving the dude the lion's share of the carries, even when they saw what Jimmy Gibbs could do. So they're clearly hell-bent on going with the split back system. Now, of the two, I'm taking
Mm.
Gibbs well and truly. Like just the receiving upside and the elusiveness of Gibbs puts him way above Montgomery. But Montgomery will have goal line carries. So in terms of rushing touchdowns, easy rushing touchdowns, he's not getting a touch of the football. He's not getting many touches of the football inside in the red zone, which is alarming for him. But in between the 20s, he's going to have a fair amount of work to do. I think personally, I think they'll do something like 10 carries for Gibbs and 15 for David Montgomery. But then, of course, Gibbs is going to be doing all the passing down work, 2-minute drills. He'll have all of that. He's going to be for me, for him to finish or to push for the top five or, you know, beat out Travis Etienne, he's going to need a lot of touchdowns this year for me. I think he'd need to have something in the range of, and I'm just throwing a number out there, he'd have to somehow get over 10 rushing touchdowns for me for him to beat Etienne because Etienne's a
Mm.
three down back who not only will he have over 1,000 yards rushing, he'll also have 60 receptions and he'll probably still find a way to get to close to 15 total touchdowns this season. Whereas I think Gibbs needs to get to 15 total touchdowns and then still have a really big breakout year to push Travis Etienne.
Mm. So last year, Gibbs had 11 touchdowns, Etienne had 12. So it was very, very even in that regard. This is rushing and receiving combined.
Yeah.
So it was very even in that regard. But Gibbs had yard per carry. He went about 5 yards per carry, which is pretty insane, to be honest. That's up there with CMC numbers. So yeah, look, he had 52 catches last year. Do we expect that to increase? Probably, because he stays on the field probably a bit more and gets more involved early on in the season. And if you're playing a PPR league, it has to be Gibbs over Etienne all day.
Probably. Maybe actually no. No, I'm going to stay strong. I'm taking Etienne over Gibbs. Yeah,
Oof.
I'm staying strong. I'm staying strong. I just don't think with Montgomery there, I don't think he can really push Etienne unless he has this insanely efficient season. Which, like knowing what Jimmy Gibbs can do, he can definitely do it, right? Like and the whole landscape of Jimmy Gibbs's season changes if an injury happens to Montgomery that sees him missing, that lands him on IR for any period of time. Like if you get Jimmy Gibbs a third down back, like he enters the Brees Hall, Bijan Robinson, CMC tier comfortably, in
Mm.
my opinion. He'd push those two if he got in
You
terms
know
of
what
points.
Gibbs needs?
What does he need?
Imagine, imagine, imagine if Montgomery goes down or gets traded.
I
I mean, that's a
yeah,
hypothetical. But
yeah. If, as I say, like if Montgomery does go down injured, I'm all in on Gibbs. Because Jimmy
mm,
Jimmy Gibbs, his ADP will be blow out massively too. That's the only other thing. You know, Jimmy Gibbs
mm,
right now, his ADP. I'll get it up here. Give me a sec. His ADP is 11. Um, so he's the end of the first round.
mm,
So if anything
mm.
happens to
Well,
yeah, Montgomery, like he goes to top six or top, like right next to Brees Hall and Bijan Robinson. Like, yeah, watch out if anything
well,
happens to Monty.
you know what's an interesting one here?
Yep.
Where do you see Josh Jacobs?
Yeah, this is one I think we're a bit split on in terms of what we think Josh Jacobs can do for us for fantasy this year. Now,
Mm,
for me, he's gone to a much better team, and I think
mm,
there is the same amount of competition at this team. I don't see AJ Dillon as a threat to him in any way, shape, or form. I don't see Marshawn Lloyd taking any carries off him. I see Josh Jacobs, handling the lion's share of the carries. I see him doing 3-down work. He's now got one of the youngest and most one of the more exciting offenses in the league. In when you throw the into the equation that you've got Jordan Love, you've got Jaden Reed, you've got Christian Watson. I can keep Romeo Dobbs, uh, Dontavian Wicks. Like there's 4 young stud receivers. Throw into this mix as well. You've got Luke Musgrave, second round tight end from last year. He was very good when he found his feet in the NFL. You throw all that in there together with a good O line, and I think you've got someone who can finish in the top 12 comfortably for running backs.
Top 12 running backs or top 12 overall?
Top 12 running backs.
Yeah, no, that's probably about fair. The thing is with Josh Jacobs, based off last year and last year only, he was horrendous in yards per carry. I think he averaged, what was it,
3.5.
what was it? 3.45 is the exact number. So, I mean, he saw a lot of work last year in a really, really bad offense, let's be honest. But do we think that might be contract related based off last year? Possibly. I'm not really too sure, but you know what? He's into a better offense now. Um, it's going to be an offense that will be able to move the ball, and he will be able to rush in more likely for more rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
It's really a like for like in terms of Aaron Jones and Josh Jacobs, right? They're very, very similar players. So they've probably got a younger version of Aaron Jones, haven't they?
Yeah, I'd say that Josh Jacobs can handle a full RV workload, whereas I don't think Aaron Jones ever could consistently. Um, like have a look
Mm.
at 2022 when the Raiders actually had a decent team and a good O line. Like he produced 1,600 rushing yards, which is insane. He still had 50 catches on top of that as well, and 12 rushing touchdowns. Like the recipe for Josh Jacobs is just to give him a lot of touches of the football, and he will produce massively for you. Like he had 100 less carries than what he did last year, than what he did in 2022 and 2023, and he also had 10 less targets. Like when I say the Raiders' offense was a dumpster fire, it was a proper dumpster fire. Like I don't know how they put
Mhm.
63 on the Chargers in that one game, but outside of that, they did sweet nothing. Like there was games where Aiden O'Connell didn't
Yeah,
even pass for 100 yards. Like to go
yeah,
from Aiden O'Connell, the raw, struggling backup quarterback who's only playing because Jimmy Garoppolo is a fraud, to go from that to Jordan Love, who is a Green Bay quarterback, therefore he's automatically a Hall of Famer. Um, yeah, like it's a massive upgrade, and I don't see how he's not like unless he's already washed at age 26, which would surprise me greatly. Um, I don't see how he doesn't come out and shoot the lights out of Green Bay.
Well, funny you say that based off the Oakland offense, or not Oakland, Vegas offense last year. I keep thinking they're still Oakland, but they probably should be. Um, yeah, I mean, 2022 when he had that ripping year, based off last year, he was against the second highest percentage in stacked boxes. That was double what he saw in 2022. So, yeah, you're spot on. Everyone's recognised that Josh Jacobs is probably the only weapon outside of Devontae Adams, and Aiden O'Connell could not hit Devontae Adams to save his life anyway. So why does it matter? So why not stack the box and just stop the run? That number won't be as high at Green Bay. You have to give Jordan Love a bit more respect than that. If you do stack the box, he's going to absolutely kill you on the outside. and he has done multiple teams already in his career. So, but I'll give you this one player I would actually draft ahead of Josh Jacobs, and this is a little bit controversial based off what he's got around him, but I would take a risk on Devon A-Chain. I would actually take a risk on Devon A-Chain. If they can give him a full workload, I don't know what the limit really is for Devon A-Chain. He could be an RB5 in the league, or he could be an RB20 based off Mostert and Jalen Wright getting the touches over him. Well, not over him, but just taking touches off him, should I say. But yeah, I mean, look at him last year, 7.7 yards per carry. I mean, I know the sample size is very, very low, but what could he be?
Well, look, let's answer that question. What could he be? What's the ceiling on him if we were to say lose Raheem Mostert? Is like, hear me out. We talked about Jameer Gibbs entering the big three if anything happened to Montgomery. Does Devon A-Chain enter the big three if anything happens to Raheem Mostert? A guy who gets notably injured very often. Is it actually possible that if Raheem Mostert at 30 odd years of age misses time this year? Yes. What if he misses a massive chunk of the season? Well, you're going to get ridiculous numbers from Devon A-Chain. Is he the most valuable handcuff in the league? In the sense that if anything happens to Mostert, he's on par with Bijan, CMC, Brees Hall. For me, he's in the same category as Jameer Gibbs. There's got to be an injury for him to be top end RB1.
Well, that's probably fair. And I understand that the concerns are with the personnel he's got around him. But I think he's actually worth the risk because if he does pay off, and this is, I guess, where he comes into value. If you're taking A-Chain, late second round, early third round, I know it's a risk in itself taking a guy so high, but this guy has potential to finish as a top 5, top 6 RB if given the opportunity. Again, last year he was ranked 4th in highest broken tackle percentage and ranked 1st in explosive run rate. So once he gets out of that box, he is gone. There is no one stopping him. He can break out for 60, 70-yard touchdowns off one carry. Just one carry in the whole set in a drive. So he doesn't need reps to get going. He just needs the ball and let him fire. But you know what the beauty about A-Chain is? He can do it in the air. He can do it on the ground. Yeah, he's very explosive, and I can just see if they give him more work, his value will just keep getting higher and higher and higher. And I think he's worth every bit of that risk.
You may disagree with me, but I would. I'm more excited about what Devon A-Chain can do this season than I am about what Jameer Gibbs can do this season. In the sense that, Montgomery is a hell of a running back himself, and he's not old. Whereas Mostert's in his early 30s. What's more likely? Mostert becomes an RB2, and Devon A-Chain takes over that backfield this year, or David Montgomery becomes the RB2 at Detroit. Personally, I think it's more likely that Devon A-Chain takes over the backfield than Jameer Gibbs takes over his. And I think you can't finish as a high-end RB1 if you're not the RB1 on your team.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, A-Chain currently is going as the ADP off the board 23. So as I said, that's probably early third round. And I think that's probably about right too. So yeah, I don't know. I really like Gibbs, but they're both in situations where they need their other personnel to go down to be really explosive. But yeah, Mostert being 31 now. I mean, where did he finish last year? A ripping year last year, which is insane in itself. But
Yeah.
nah, look, I don't know. It's a hard one. But if you're talking about value, you'd probably pick A-Chain later on in the draft versus Gibbs early, wouldn't you?
I would personally, but I think there'll be people out there that are very high on Gibbs, and I can understand why. He's an excitement machine. So if you were to go Gibbs, like I'm
Mhm.
not going to knock it. I'm just going to say, look, you can get Devon A Chain, who's the same thing and in a better situation. Uh, on Raheem Mostert, he uh, finished in PPR as the RB5 last year.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, if he was to, and
insane.
that's 2 games missed as well in there, might I add. So if he plays
Yeah.
those games, if we're going off points per game, and I think we should have a look at it, like he goes up to number 4, you know. So there's definitely the opportunity. And by the way, Devon A Chain was number 5 in points per game last year in running backs. Um, so they can support 2 high end running backs, despite what I said before. Um, Now, of course, Devon A Chain did have a 51-point game in there. But is that happening again? Yeah, probably not, but it can happen, and that just shows you the ceiling on A Chain. Well, let's look at the next guy on this list here. Kyron Williams. Now, he had a very good year last year. Um, he averaged 21.3 points per game, and he also finished RB7 overall, including a stint on IR in the middle there. So I can't. He only had 2 games below 10 points a game. Everything else, he had a 38.4, 28, 27.7, a 30.1. He's a high ceiling guy. And I think he would have been drafted and he would have been in the conversation with Brees Hall and Bijan Robinson had they not drafted Blake Corum. I just think Blake Corum will take some carries off him, and he's also a very good player as well, Blake Corum. Yeah, what are we what are our thoughts on Kyron Williams this year?
Kyron Williams is a bit. We've actually, well, in drafts at the moment, he's going a lot higher than what we actually projected him to. Um, so on Sleeper currently, he's around about 15. Everyone's got Kyron Williams in their rankings between about 4 and 6. So we probably should have mentioned Kyron Williams a bit earlier because he's getting that respect around the league for being a top RB. And if he's healthy, there's absolutely no reason why he can't. Um, I mean, he was fantastic in nearly every statistical category last year. He saw 25 plus touches when he was fully healthy, pretty much every game. Um, third highest broken tackle percentage at 25%. Fourth highest yards after contact at 2.9. And he was fourth in most red zone rushing attempts from RBs last year. So if he can continue that and stay healthy, he'll be top 5. I don't think Blake Corum will be much of a threat to him. But then again, Sean McVay does love throwing the magnets around and trying new things. And that's where Kyron Williams came out of last year. So, yeah, I mean, even based off last year, had a heavy workload and he got injured. So, do they put Blake Corum in just to ease that off a little bit? Maybe. But also, Sean McVay loves using his top players on his team. So, loves using Cooper Cup. He's had a history of being a number 1 wide receiver around the league. And now let's see if he does the same thing with Kyron Williams.
Yeah, I think this is one of the more volatile picks for a 3 down back. You know, he could finish in that top 5, pushing for I suppose that pushing the big 3. But at the same time, if like Quorum becomes a thing, we're sort of looking at you know high end like high end RB2, low end RB1 for Kyron Williams, which is probably where I'm willing to draft him. I'd be taking him probably 10th running back off the board, even though he's not going there right now. I think he's overvalued, in my opinion. Uh, in saying that, I think there's still very good production in him. And if you just want to lock away some solid, consistent scores, then I completely understand it. He will still be their pass catcher, I would have thought. I don't think Blake Corum's a better pass catcher than Kyron Williams. I just think that Blake Corum has the ability to be potentially a better runner in this league than Kyron Williams. But, that's unproven yet. So we'll see what happens. But I I'm certainly taking Gibbs, A Chain, Jacobs, Etienne, all the guys we mentioned. I'm taking over Kyron Williams.
Oh, I don't think I'd take Josh Jacobs over Kyron Williams, if I'm honest. Only based off his pass catching ability. So in PPR leagues, that's gold. But A Chain, I'd probably take Kyron Williams over A Chain, and I'd probably take Kyron Williams over Etienne as well. I'd actually have him quite high. Yeah, yeah. I'd probably. I think if, and this is a big if he stays healthy, he's going to be a top 5, top 6 running back in fantasy by the end of the season.
What do you think the odds are of him staying healthy?
It's hard to predict, right? Because he only really had one full year. So if they can probably use Blake Corum more in a way where they give Kyron Williams a few less touches for him to stay healthy, probably a bit higher. But now that they've got a legitimate, let's say, not really a 1-2 punch, but at least another option to go at running back, then I actually think that helps out Kyron Williams.
Yeah. Do you think that having Blake Corum there will make, I suppose, Kyron Williams more efficient with his touches, or is it just a case of keeping him on the field?
It's just more keeping him on the field. Yeah, I mean, it only takes one really big hit for him to get injured, I suppose, and that's with anyone, I suppose. But yeah, I do think that it'll keep him healthy anyway. It'll keep him fresh. He'll be up, and this is where you want running backs to be on the field, isn't it? So, but you want to keep him healthy though. That's the main problem, I reckon, with Kyron Williams.
Yeah. Now you could say the same
Do
thing
you
about.
now? I'm just going to now I would actually take him. Yeah, as I said, probably his RB5 off the board. Honestly, that's crazy. But I probably would. Again, based off last year, he absolutely took the piss. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. There's our first big, really big disagreement. I've taken him as a borderline RB1, and Matt's going top 5 for him. Well, this is a guy that I think, look, I'm very keen on, and I've put him in the top 12 because of his pass catching ability. It's Alvin Kamara. He missed 6 games last year because of that suspension he had in the off season. But I really do think he's way undervalued at an ADP of 53, right? Where you take into account that last year, if you look at points per game, Alvin Kamara finishes the RB3 in points per game. He missed the first 4 games of the season. Then he went 21.4, 18.7, 17.4, 29.3, 27. Then and 11, it's a bit low. Then back up to 18.5, then the bye, then 15.9, 28.9, 13.5, 16, and then 8.5 and 6.9. So a quiet finish to the year in his last 2 games. But like there's those numbers, but then there's also this. He had 14 targets in his first game back in the NFL. In fact, he had 14 targets in 2 games last year. In those 2 games, he went 21.4 and 29.3. He had 13 catches for 33 yards in one of those games. Like, that is PPR gold. Who cares about the yardage? It's 1 point every time you catch the football. Like, it's stupid. And then he also went 12 carries for 12 catches for 91 yards, on top of still being a pretty solid rusher of the football. not, you know, I think it's around 4 yards per carry, but we can look it up. But Alvin Kamara, like
It's a bit less.
a bit less, is it? 3.9. Yeah, 3.9. Um, you know, it's a bit low, sure, but even if he is splitting carries with Kendra Miller, like, it's another one of these Kyron Williams sort of. It's a Kyron Williams sort of situation for me, And when you're drafting this guy at 53, and Kyron Williams is going at what is Kyron Williams going at? 15, 15 and 53, and I think they both contribute to the offense in a similar way. Mate, sure, Kyron Williams is probably a better runner at this point in his career than what Alvin Kamara is right now. But then at the same time, Kamara's catching way more passes because Derek Carr is his quarterback than what Kyron Williams is. Like, it's ridiculous
Mm,
how many catches Kamara had last year, and there's no reason that doesn't change because there's no change of
mm.
quarterback.
Yeah, so as you said, their personnel pretty much remains the same. Um, I think if anything, they lost an offensive lineman. Probably not what Kamara wants to hear. Um, but yeah, as you said, his ADP's at 53. The only real concern with Kamara, I'd imagine going around drafts, is he's getting a bit older. I mean, I think he's 28, turning 29. So if that's the only real, um, and I guess Kendra probably getting more touches in his sophomore year, but yeah, I mean, he's probably still going to be involved in a lot of the pass catching work down there at New Orleans. Um, I think he's gold at he's ADP at 53.
Hmm.
He's the RB 18 off the board currently, um, which is insane to be quite honest. Until you actually see Alvin Kamara declining, maybe he did 2 years ago, but then he bounced back this last year. So until you actually see the real decline, then I don't think you should be drafting him that low.
No, and okay. I'm gonna throw a stat out there that just when I looked away from the screen for like half a second, that's when I figured out this stat. So, in 13 games last year, Alvin Kamara had 86 targets, right? In a 17
Mm.
game season, that number goes up to 112. Now, he had 75 catches as well, right? And if that goes up to a 17 game season, it goes up to 98 catches. The dude is he's like a full on wide receiver for Derek Carr, basically. Like, he's just so involved in their passing game. You look at the first 4 years of his career when Drew Brees' arm was barely hanging on, you know? He had 81 receptions in his first 3 years of his career and 83 receptions in 2020. He had the lowest amount of targets he had in his first 4 years of his career was 97. He was always about around 100 targets in a season, and that was between 14 and 16 games. Like, this was the first season where he returned to his 2020 receiving numbers. He's rushing. It's never been the highlight of his game. He's always been a receiving back who can do some solid stuff on the ground. Look at it, like he's never had an 1,000-yard rushing season, which is insane to think about because he's been a fantasy beast for so long.
Mm.
But yeah, he can do tons of good things for the Saints, and to draft him at 53 for me is insane.
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you one name who I draft above Alvin Kamara, and I wouldn't even look twice on. And we're talking about an older running back here, and I know this argument here is going to spark a lot, but Derrick Henry I would take over Alvin Kamara this year. Um,
I would, I wouldn't.
now, mate, uh, I don't understand how you can't knock the king. He's the king for a reason. Um, now he's now got a significant upgrade from going from Tennessee, I guess he made a AFC Championship game once upon a time there, but for the majority of his career, let's be honest, Tennessee have been a basket case. Really an offense that hasn't really been exciting. He's had Ryan Tannehill for the most of his career. And he's not really a noted pass catcher at all. So that take that away from what he can do. But what he's beautiful at is just absolutely trucking blokes on the ground. I mean, Gus Edwards last year in the same offense had 13 rushing touchdowns. King Henry's going to have more than 13 rushing touchdowns next year. He's going to have that could be the floor. 13 could be the floor for him next year. Yeah, and he's got a significant upgrade, better O-line. The Ravens score in bunches. It's a pass. It's really a run first offense, and especially in the red zone too, they love to run it and through their running backs. So King Henry for me would be probably an RB7, RB8 based off the significant upgrade that he got.
Interesting. Now, the one thing I'll note is that there's a new offensive coordinator in town for Baltimore. Greg Roman is out the door. Greg Roman's off at the Chargers. He's noted for creating these ridiculous running back offenses, right? I now think, like the new guy they've brought in, his name's Todd Monken, and I don't know much about Todd Monken, but a quick Google search says that Todd Monken has presented a dynamic offensive scheme that features 3 wide receiver sets and constantly has wide receivers running open or clearing out of space for their cohorts. The Ravens' offense has yet to reach its full potential, and Monken has guys consistently open and able to operate in space. What that says to me is not as much rushing. Could Derrick Henry still get 13 rushing touchdowns? Absolutely, he could. Will he rush over 1,000 yards? Yes. Like, but the question is, by how much will he go over 1,000 rushing yards? The dude is 30. I understand it's Baltimore. It's still Lamar Jackson there. He's still going to take rushing touchdowns and rushing yards away from him. There's Keaton Mitchell, who was a very efficient runner when he got given chances last year. He's off an ACL tear, though. I don't know how much he'll feature in the first half of the season. Second half of the season, there's legitimate cause for concern, but in terms of the first half, there is a strategy where you draft Derrick Henry, he brains it as a solo running back with Justice Hill maybe taking the field for, I don't know, 5% of the snaps, 10% of the snaps potentially. But yeah, Derrick Henry for the first half of the season, I see him taking a lot of field game time. I don't think he's going to have many pass catches. I think he's just going to be doing a lot of pass blocking. He'll still do some rushing, of course. I still reckon he'll be given a fair amount of carries, but to take him over Alvin Kamara, nah.
See, you're talking about Derrick Henry's age, and you tell me he's old. You tell me that he's in the graveyard for running back, 30 years old.
Yeah, I know Alvin Kamara's not far off it either. But
yeah, you are.
Pass
yeah,
catching.
you are. Yeah, you are. Yeah. So last year in a low-powered offense, he finished, and I know you're gonna like this one. He finished 6th in highest breakaway yards percentage for RBs, and he was 29, 30 years old. It's going to be crazy what he's going to be able to do in Baltimore.
He was also outsnapped by Ty J. Spears.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Sure.
Doesn't matter.
Derrick Henry averaged 14.5 points per game last.
They knew he was leaving. They knew he was leaving, and they were just trying to try something else. Yeah.
Look, I'm not a believer in the slightest.
Yeah. You watch. Just you watch. If you're all listening out there, draft Derrick Henry as the RB8.
Sure. Or you can draft Alvin Kamara as like the freaking RB15 or whatever he's going at. I know which one I'm taking.
Take them both. You might win the whole thing.
Yeah, you well and truly could, to be honest. But Alvin Kamara is the best running back. Is the best value running back this year. Okay, and I won't hear anything else. If he
That's fair.
yeah, like the dude can actually have 100 catches. It's not actually unreasonable for him to have 100 catches this year, which is insane, right?
That's unreasonable.
You're like, it's crazy stuff. Anyway, we should get back.
All right. So would you take Derrick Henry or Isaiah Pacheco?
Well, I've already spoken on this. I would take Isaiah Pacheco. You've referenced a post
Why?
I did prior to. Oh, hang on. Here comes the sneeze. No, we're good. Okay. You're referencing a post that I did maybe a month ago for Insight. And
Mm.
I'm still taking Pacheco. I think. I'm still taking Pacheco. Not as convinced as what I was a month ago, mind you, because they added in a pass catcher who's fast, stretches the field in Xavier Worthy. You've got Rashee Rice probably missing half the season or close to it. They have Hollywood Brown. At full pelt, I'm not sure how many, like, Pacheco's fifth in line for catches, right? And then he's not the runner that Derrick Henry is. Like, he's not Derrick Henry. That's just the reality of it. And the Chiefs at full pelt, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, right? But it is Isaiah Pacheco. He is a 3-down back, and he could still be getting 15 to 20 carries a game and still having, I don't know, 3 or 4 catches a game. And, all of a sudden we're looking at someone who's going to be in and around that top 12. I think they're both borderline RB1s. I think it's more likely Derrick Henry finishes ahead of Pacheco. But for redraft, it's very even. For Dynasty, I'm taking Pacheco every day. But that's a different story.
Oh,
Talking
yeah.
redraft.
Dynasty's not even a question. Yeah.
It's very even for me. I probably lean towards Pacheco just on the age side, and that's the only reason.
So Pacheco had 9 touchdowns last year. That's all he had, 9.
Yeah.
Could that increase? Possibly. Possibly. But now they've got a lot of passing weapons there, which I think Mahomes is going to absolutely try and rip his arm off, and just pass it to every single player that he's got, based off him being angry last year that he had no one outside of Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. I will say that Pacheco looks like he's got a top 5 offensive line with the 7th easiest schedule in 2024. So that's a positive for him. So he's probably a safe option in the top 10 to draft a running back. And they didn't really add anyone to take touches off him. They lost Jerick McKinnon, which is probably a positive for him. And they've only really got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And did they draft a running back? I can't remember if they did, but if they did, it was very, very late in the draft and insignificant. So, look, if we're going to compare, Derrick Henry and Isaiah Pacheco, they're probably going to finish around the same mark. But I like to have arguments. I'm an argumentative sort of guy, and Derrick Henry will finish higher than Isaiah Pacheco in 2024.
That's all right, because Alvin Kamara will finish higher than both of them.
Oh, I think he'll finish below both of them.
How can you have 100 catches and not finish inside the top 10?
I just don't think he'll be featured as much. But hey, Alvin Kamara is still a great option.
Steal of the draft.
If he's getting if he's ADP 53, it's still a great pick.
Steal of the draft. Okay, I don't know if Braino, our editor, will listen to this, but make Alvin Kamara the thumbnail of this draft. That's a good test to see if he listens.
Here's one for you. Now we've mentioned those games. Does Rashad White get involved in any of this talk at all? Can he go higher than any of these guys we mentioned?
Rashad White should lose the starting running back job. Like he's not a very efficient runner at all. He was just there was so much crappy running back play behind him that he was forced to do everything in the running back department last year for the Buccaneers. Like I don't like him as an NFL player in the slightest. Like if I look at Rashad White, he's got to be close to one of the more inefficient runners. Yeah, they gave him 272 carries, and he went at 3.6 yards a carry. Didn't crack the 1,000 mark. Now, what did he do in terms of catches? He had 64 catches last year. He did have 50 in the season beforehand, so clearly he's their pass catching guy. They did draft Bucky Irving. I don't know if he's going to take. He probably will take some catches off him, but he's not going to, I suppose, steal the starting job off him. He was a more efficient pass catcher last year. He's gone up from 5.8 yards per catch in 2022 to 8.6 yards per catch in 2023. I think he should be drafted in the dead zone of running backs with your Najee Harris's, your David Montgomerys in that sort of tier. But no, he's going at around 40 right now.
Oh,
Is it a bit harsh? Is it a bit harsh?
yeah. Yeah, that is very, very harsh. Now, obviously in the roster, if you get Rashad White, he's going to be an RB2, right? You're not drafting him as an RB1 unless you just decide to go a full wide receiver first four rounds, which realistically you probably shouldn't do. But let's say Rashad White is your RB2. He finished number 7 last year in all of running backs, which already is based off RB1 numbers. Now, you're telling me that Alvin Kamara is a steal of the draft, which I think is fair. That is fair. I have no problem with that at all. However, and you're telling me that White is one of the most inefficient runners. Well, his numbers actually are very similar to Kamara last year. He had 10 less catches, but he had more touchdowns. So, and
Sure,
the yards per carry was very, very, very similar. So,
sure.
look, I agree with you. I probably would have Alvin Kamara above a Rashad White. I personally, I probably would. But I would still have Rashad White as the RB 12 to 14 drafted off the board.
All right, I'll ask you this. You're drafting at around the 40 ADP mark, right? And you see Rashad White there. You need a second running back. Are you going for him, or are you going to take a flyer on someone?
Yeah.
You would draft him at 40. You would genuinely draft him. Because I can't bring myself to draft
Yeah.
him. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I just can't.
I would take him above James Cook. I would take him above Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
I'd probably take him above Kenny Walker. And the list goes on.
So I wouldn't take him above Kenneth Walker, but I know I'm biased in that regard because he's probably my favorite player in the NFL, and he plays for my team. But so I'm
So Kenny
disregarding
Walker,
my.
I love Kenny Walker as a player, right?
Oh, yeah, but there's Charbonnet.
I really like Kenny Walker as a player, but there's Charbonnet there. It's an offense that's not too bad. It's not
It'd
too
be
bad,
great.
but there is Charbonnet there.
Yeah, it'd be
And
great
then
if
they've
there was
also
some
got
good
Kenny Walker, who
play.
has. Yeah, absolutely. But Kenny Walker, how many games did he miss last year, or in his career so far? I mean, he hasn't really played a full season. He's missed 2 games per season, which is actually higher than what I thought. Lower than I thought. Sorry, I thought he'd probably miss between 4 and 5 games. But
He was
no, I definitely
yeah.
would take Rashad White over all those guys I mentioned just before. James Cook, I'm not really. Well, I like James Cook as a player, but they just added Ray Davis, who's a pass catching back.
Is
So
pass
I think
catching or is
James
he a
Cook's
pure power back?
PPR. No, I'm fairly certain he's a pass catching back.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, if that's going to kill James Cook's value in the PPR game, not cooked it, but no pun intended, but it's going to hamper it. And I just don't think he gets rushing touchdowns anyway, James Cook. So I would definitely take him over James Cook. I'd definitely take Rashad White over James Cook, Joe Mixon, and Kenny Walker. And I wouldn't even think twice.
So I did just look up Ray Davis. He's a very good power back. Pass apparently
Mm,
so like pass catching wise, James Cook still has that going for him, but I don't think there's a
mm,
full workload for James Cook at all this year. And is
mm.
Josh Allen really going to be
No,
checking
I think-
down with the arm that he has? Probably not, right?
Mm.
Um, n-
Yeah.
look,
I mean, the only one you can probably make a call for Rashad White being, well, I mean, what do you think about Joe Mixon now? Like, would you have Joe Mixon above Rashad White?
no, I just don't think CJ Stroud in that offense. I don't think they'll be running the ball very much.
You mean rushing the ball?
Yeah, I do mean rushing
You
the
mean
ball.
rushing the ball or throwing the ball?
I mean rushing. Yeah,
So it's hard to predict what Joe Mixon's going to do. I mean, it's a whole new offense, and he's 27 now. He did finish as the RB5 last year, which is pretty insane. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I
Particularly
mean, whole
when
new offense with CJ Stroud.
yeah, I understand because like Joe Mixon, he if you reflect on what he did last year, like it's not that inspiring. Like you just think about it, and you're like, oh, did Joe Mixon really do much last year? No, not really. But then you go and see that he's RB5 last year. That definitely surprises me hearing that. I think when you've got Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell as your three wide receivers, and CJ Stroud coming off the year that he had, and will only get better. Um, I can't see them running the ball very much this year, unless CJ Stroud manages to regress.
Mhm. Yeah, I would probably avoid Joe Mixon in my fantasy drafts, personally. Um, but then again, Singletary last year, he performed and he played really well with a very, very similar offense. So if the positive out of Joe Mixon is that Singletary did it, I know they've just added Diggs, so it's a little bit different. But if Singletary could do it last year, why can't Mixon? Um, I'm not in love with it. I just don't think he'll be decent. I mean he'll be probably a high end RB2, um, with maybe RB1 numbers in certain weeks, but
Mm.
um, but he's also capable of a 5 and a 6. So um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, we mentioned Kenneth Walker before, but I'll quickly touch on him here. Like, yes, he is Charbonnet. Um, the offense isn't great. They've got three elite wide receivers, but not really a quarterback to get the ball to them very well. So they're still going to go to the ground game a bit. Um, I hope that Mike McDonald realizes that there's a massive disparity between Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker as runners, and that Kenneth Walker is actually a much better player than Charbonnet. But uh, if that realization is found, but they're still persistent on protecting Kenneth Walker a bit, then it's going to hurt his stocks a bit. But at the same time, you know, if he was given the lion's share of the carries at any point, he's a very, very good player and a young, exciting player. There's a bit of bias, but I'd say he'd be pushing, inside the top 10 in points per game if Charbonnet wasn't in the building.
yeah, that's absolutely spot on. Look, I mean, how much does Charbonnet really eat into Kenny Walker's touches? Probably won't be many. Um, you wouldn't expect. I mean, as you said, I think Kenny Walker is a much better back. Um, Funny enough, he actually had the highest broken tackle percentage last year among all RBs, 27%. I'm rounding it up. The highest. So I never would have expected that, actually. So, um, yeah. Does the offense change halfway through the year if Geno shits the bed? Maybe. Howe might take over and he probably would rock the ball a bit more. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, he averaged 17 touches last year, and 82 total yards in the 14 games that he played, which was at least 41% of the snaps. So, yeah, and he surpasses Charbonnet in every single metric. So, and he looks like, as an eye test, a better back. So, I mean, Kenny Walker's always good value where you get him. But,
yeah.
if we're getting him, what's he going off in his ADP? He's going at what's he going at? 52. So he's going around Alvin Kamara. So again, good
Yeah.
value.
Yeah. I'm taking Kamara over Kenneth Walker comfortably. There's probably a few. Are you taking
Yeah.
James Cook over Kenneth Walker?
Oh, probably not.
Yeah, I'm probably going Kenneth Walker as well. But I was just trying to make sure that wasn't my bias talking. Um, you know,
Yeah,
a,
probably not.
a guy that, although Sleepers projected him for a similar amount of points, a guy that I'm definitely not taking over Kenneth Walker is Aaron Jones. Now, I understand that they're probably going to run the ball a fair bit this year, Minnesota, with new quarterback in the system. Um, but you think that the focus of this offense is still getting the ball to Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson in open field, and doing whatever you can to do that should be the focus of this offense. Now, will it be with JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold in the quarterback room? Probably not, right? Like, I struggle to see how they can get to 4,000 passing yards with Hawkinson, Addison, and Jefferson, right? Oh, not with those three, rather. Sorry, with Darnold and McCarthy in the quarterback room.
Yeah, so I think my biggest problem with Aaron Jones as of late is his injury history. Um, he can't really stay healthy. He's getting old now, and his competition is now Ty Chandler, who, as we said in previous podcasts, um, he's been second half of the year last year was very good. So um, it'll probably be a committee at that point, and I do think Aaron Jones will get the touchdowns, which probably propels him as a better running back in fantasy. But yeah, as you said, the passing game, it'd be rude to forget about Justin Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson. Like, they're your main three on offense, let's be honest. Um, but if Aaron Jones stays healthy, is there a world where he can finish top 10?
No, I think the competition from Chandler. We know that it's a split uh, committee at the running back. That's been confirmed for us so far. Um,
Mm.
I don't think he's got the volume in this offense to be a RB1. I think he can finish as a high end RB2, top 15s, in that late teens, mid teens sort of area. But I don't think he can push to be in the top 10 sort of things.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Look, I would probably avoid Aaron Jones personally, unless you're getting extreme value later on the draft.
Mm.
He's probably the RB, I don't know, 18 or so off the board, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
That's just spitballing, but I'm actually going to check his ADP. It's 62, so that's probably RB 20 from memory.
Yep.
If Kamara's 18, then Aaron Jones is 20. So I would probably avoid Aaron Jones as well. The only thing I can really say is if he does stay healthy and you do draft him as your RB3 for bench depth, yeah, you could have games where he fills in for buys or injuries, and he has weeks where he does finish as finish as a top 10 RB just on certain weeks. I mean, he could have
Mm.
two rushing touchdowns in 1 week, for example, for 60 yards or something like that. But
Mm.
what's that already? That's already 18, 19 points. So,
18, yeah.
yeah, nah, other than that, yeah, other than that, probably stay away. I would probably take James Conner above him, personally. James Conner, Well, I've always liked James Conner. Look at his.
Mm.
So he was banged up last year. He was injured, right? But at the start of his season, he went 9.4, 16.6, 18.6, 6, then 4, then got injured. But when he came back from injury, well, this is probably more. Well, it took him a while to get going, but 22.5 by 16.4, 19.7, 25.8, 28.4. Those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 weeks in a row we had probably top 5 RB numbers for that week.
Mm.
And yeah, if he stays healthy, I know he's old, he's 29 now, and he's got Trey Benson there now too. I would just hope that this guy, if you're drafting as the RB 20-ish, let's say 19, 20, 21, something around there, gotta hope he stays healthy. Hopefully he gets all the carries, and I think he's capable of big games.
Yeah, I do too. But the only concern I've got around James Conner, as we mentioned, is Trey Benson because, you know, it was clarified for us that James Conner will be, they want to feature him more in the passing game, which I kind of understand. For me, he's probably third in line for catches. Like you've got Marvin Harrison, who's clearly number one, Trey McBride, who's clearly number two, and then you've kind of got Michael Wilson there. He could be third, or you could just decide to come up with some design plays for uh, James Conner. Now, if the passing numbers go up, that should be to compensate the rushing numbers going down. You know, because I think Trey Benson, being the prospect that he will get immediate involvement in the running game from week one. Um, yeah, I'm not sure they're in a bit of that dead zone in running back. You know, anything after the ADP of probably, I don't know, 65 to 60 to 70, all the way to maybe the 80 mark. There's a few guys there that just there's a few question marks. There's way too many question marks over for me, and I think that's why they're going where they're going.
All right, how about this? All right, I'm going to name a couple of players that in previous drafts have gone a lot higher than their current ADP that is below James Conner. And I want you to tell me that who would you prefer? I'm gonna pick three guys, and I think I know the answer to one of them already, but I'll let you answer the question. So I'm picking Swift at Chicago,
Mhm.
Tony Pollard at Tennessee, and Najee Harris at Pittsburgh. Now, two of those three guys that I named are at different landing spots now. Don't forget, Tony Pollard was ranked as a first round, early second round pick last year, and let's be honest, he flopped hard. But he's now going around the ADP of 79. New team, you know, a chance to really rejuvenate his career. And same with DeAndre Swift. He's been around the league the last couple of years, but I would probably take Swift and well, I would actually definitely take Swift and Pollard over James Conner. I probably wouldn't take Najee Harris though.
Yeah. So Swift is the number one out of all those guys for me. I agree. I agree with. I don't. Is Swift number one for you out of them, or is it Pollard?
Um, I would probably pick Swift.
Yeah. So Swift is number one for me. I think, although he's like fifth, or you could even argue sixth in line for pass catching, it is a very good offense. You'd think they're still going to have some sort of focus on the running game because it is a rookie quarterback. Like, I get it's Caleb Williams and he's a freak of nature, but you're still going to look at the running game and be careful with developing Caleb Williams, right? So, in
Mm.
that regard, I think there's definitely plenty of opportunity for DeAndre Swift. I don't believe in Khalil Herbert as a viable NFL running back anymore. I think he's had ample opportunities to prove it, and he's never done so. Um, Even when the days of Dave Montgomery there, like he was efficient when he was given 10 carries a game, But the moment they upped it to 15 or 20, he was a bum. He also not a very good third down blocker,
Mm.
right? Tony
Yeah.
Pollard, like all this hype on him last year. I remember if we looking back at 2022, back when it was Zeke and Pollard, everyone was screaming for Pollard to start. You know, I I was fortunate enough to have traded him away for a first round pick. Uh, like I got a first round pick and I traded away Tony Pollard, and I think I got something else as well. But I got at least a first round pick, which ended up being the 101, which ended up being Bijan Robinson. So it was Bijan Robinson and whatever else I got for Tony Pollard. And he was one of those guys where his value was always higher than what he'd actually produce. Um, and now that the
Mm.
value's gone, like they're sort of seeing Tony Pollard for what he actually is, and it's someone who can't actually handle a full workload as an NFL running back for 17 games. Um,
Yeah.
so I think the way that Tennessee use him this year is optimal for him, and it's optimal for Tennessee. But how does that affect his fantasy production? I probably like to look back at his Dallas days with Ezekiel Elliott and then take maybe 10% off it. So where does that land him? I don't know off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but you know, look at 2022 and take 10% off it, and that's probably what you're getting from him this year. Najee Harris, I'm disappointed he hasn't really panned out as his elite running back in the NFL because I really liked him coming out of college. And I still quite like him as a player now. Um, when there was rumors that he'd be traded to Dallas going around, I sort of tested the waters in a lot of dynasty leagues to see what the interest was in Najee Harris. Like I still found that I'd have to pay more than I was willing to pay. Like people wanted second round picks plus a running back for him, which I found surprising. Um, but yeah, that's where we are. I think Najee Harris this year, I don't think much changes. It might get a little bit better just because they've got a more dynamic running game with either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Like it's a mobile quarterback. It sort of spreads the offense a little bit. That'll help Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. The presence of Jalen Warren there is probably the alarming thing for Najee. Warren is a pretty decent player himself and more efficient as a runner.
Yeah. So, yeah, back on the Tony Pollard point, I do think that, yeah, as you said, he could not handle a full workload at all. He just wasn't explosive enough or didn't even look explosive enough. He probably looked tired, if anything, and just couldn't do it. So I think that's going to propel him for a good fantasy season. Not a solid fantasy season, but probably maybe a borderline top 20 fantasy season. Could be an RB too, and could have some big games to win you a week here and there. I still think Najee Harris is available on the trade table in real life. I think he's gettable. If they start off poorly, I think they'll try and get value out of their running back situation. And I think if he ends up at Dallas, because they seem like they're pretty keen, um, yeah, I mean, he'll go from you know borderline rosterable to realistically maybe even a top RB. Well,
Mm.
not top RB, but top 15 maybe. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know. One of those things. The one that I would probably, if we're going this deep already, the one I would actually target and I would circle on my calendar and all my draft boards that I've got is Zamir White. I think he's the one that could really explode. And he showed it in the back end of last year when he had the opportunity. Josh Jacobs got injured. And they did not seem keen enough to sign Josh Jacobs for that because they liked what Zamir White could do. He would be one sort of around, I think he's going as the RB. Let's have a look. He's going as the RB. His ADP is 85 currently. So, which is probably the RB 25, something around there. That is an absolute bargain, in my opinion. If you're getting him around about that pick, he's one guy that could be a high end RB2 at the end of the year if everything pans out correctly. And this is exactly what I'm talking about with value. He's the epitome of the definition of value.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm equally as high on Zamir White. I think we saw in the last 4 games of last year that he is an efficient runner and someone that can handle uh, a full workload, in my opinion. I'll get his numbers up here. So in week 17, he had 17 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown. He also had like he's not a big pass catcher, but he did get targeted 4 times and had 3 catches for 16 yards. Then we go to that Kansas City game where they nearly won, but Aiden O'Connell couldn't pass the damn thing. Well, thank goodness Zamir Wright could run the football, or else they probably would have lost that game by miles. He had 22 carries for 145 yards. Nothing going in the passing game as expected when your quarterback can't actually complete any sort of passes. Then you look at week 17, he had 20 carries for 71 yards. He also had 5 catches for 35 yards in the air. And then the final game of the season, he had 25 carries for 112 yards and then just the 1 catch for 9 yards. So is he much of a pass catching back? No, but he can comfortably run at 4.5 yards per carry, I reckon. And yeah, um,
Yeah.
yeah, I really do think that he can push. Maybe not. Oh, I think he could end up being at around 16, 17, 18 in that area. Um, he and if he's having an insanely efficient season, he could work his way to push the top 12. If there's some injuries, particularly too, and
But this is where
yeah,
this is what you call value.
this is value because he's going
That's
at
value.
85. Yeah, um, yeah, no, very big fan of Zamir White.
You know who else I reckon is good value?
Mhm.
And this is a bit deeper on, but if we're going value at this point
Yeah,
at the draft, if you're looking for league winners or potential league winners, I'm looking at Zach Moss at around about ADB 100. Um, Now, if that offense is any good this year, um, this guy is going to have a lot of goal line carries. Um, if Buddy Mixon did it last year, why not Zach Moss?
yeah,
He's really got no competition outside of, well, he's got Chase Brown. He's got no competition really at all. Even the Bengals are saying he's set for a big role in 2024. At ADP 100, I would absolutely target that one. And another one that I target with a low ADP is Brian Robinson. His
Brian
ADP is
Robson.
111.
All right, I'm gonna throw one out there
Yep.
that might actually be above all those guys. Nick Chubb at ADP 89. That's absurd to me. That is absolutely absurd. I understand he had that massive knee injury last year where he tore just about everything you can tear in a knee. Um, but he's done it before,
Mm,
and then he did it in college, and then he had
mhm.
this quality of a career so far. I know that he's 28 now, and he would have been maybe 20 or 19 when he did it the first time around. But uh, I don't think I think he falls into this category that you're talking about with Derrick Henry of they're just built different. They're just built different. Like it doesn't
Mm.
matter if Derrick Henry's age 30. We're still talking about him as a borderline RB1, right? Nick Chubb going in
Are
at
you worried
AD.
about Jerome Ford?
No, like what did like from someone who picked Jerome Ford off waivers. He started the season all right. Um, he had some decent games there, but like as he faded on, his yards per carry just started to drop off a cliff. Like every second game he would struggle to go for more than 3 yards per carry. Like you look at the first I will say this. Against Pittsburgh, which I think was the week where Chubb did his knee, he had 16 carries, 106 yards. That's what put him on the map. We were like, we got to scramble and get him onto our rosters, right? Then he went 10 carries, 18 yards, and a touchdown. He still produced a good score because he also had a receiving touchdown that game. And I think he will handle pass catching duties, Jerome Ford. I think he's still very much in the Kareem Hunt role to Nick Chubb. I don't think he's an actual threat to take carries off Nick Chubb. But hey, I think at that ADP of 90, he's well worth the risk.
Yeah, he's 28. He's coming. I don't know. I don't think personally I'd target him. I'm more looking at upside, the guys that can go that next level. I think he might just get back to playing and maybe scoring consistently. I'd be very, very shocked if he comes out and balls out. I'd be insane. Um, but another one that I'm looking at deep in the draft, his ADP is 115 currently, is Gus Edwards. Now, we're talking about the RB1 at the Chargers and a run first offense. They've already stated they want to run the ball. They've got J.K. Dobbins. He's off an Achilles, whatever. The only real guy that could take touches off him is Vidal. They're just drafted.
Yep.
It's probably the only one. But they're probably going to run it so often that it's not going to matter who touches it. So I would actually seriously look at, Gus with the 115 ADP. I would look at Zeke at 122. We're talking real deep in the draft here where these guys are lucky to make rosters, but they can carve out a role on your roster if they pan out. So they're probably the two guys that I would look at deep in drafts. And I'll give you another name who I would take pretty deep in the draft is Jalen Warren. Is probably another one. His ADP is 98. He had a pretty good year last year. Pass catching back, they can probably do everything. If Najee Harris really does suck and they want to ship him off, then Jalen Warren is really the guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I think if they do move on to G Harris, you know, Jalen Warren becomes that he's screaming a bit of Austin Eckler about him in the sense that if you look back maybe I don't know 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whenever it was, it's been a while, but when they had Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler, you know, is Najee Harris Melvin Gordon in this situation? Probably, which is brutal on him. But yeah, Melvin Najee Harris is Melvin Gordon. They move him. They get rid of him. They've got Jalen Warren, who's Austin Eckler, and all of a sudden you've got this high level pass catching running back who can also carry the football really well, and it's just this elite fantasy prospect, right? Just because of the volume, like that's what Austin Eckler has been all about: volume, efficiency out the door the last few years. But the volume that he gets has been what's elevated him to an elite running back status. Yeah, yeah.
And I know you just mentioned Austin Eckler. I've also mentioned Brian Robinson, but Brian Robinson does have Austin Eckler in the house.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
Austin Eckler fantasy relevant?
I think so, and it's he's in that dead zone, I think. But yeah, I think he is relevant because although in terms of his ground game, like he's not an efficient runner anymore. That the tread on his tires has been worn thin in that regard. But pass catching, he's still a very good pass catcher. If Brian Robinson misses time, they'll have no choice but to use Austin Eckler as their three down back because there's nothing behind him, right? They'll give a random guy on the practice squad 10 carries a game, but they're not going to get much out of him. I wouldn't have thought. Whereas Austin Eckler, like the pedigree on Eckler is he's been a three down back since they moved off Melvin Gordon 6 or 7 years ago. And he's been always in the top 12 running backs barring injury since that moment. Like I think last year was the first time he was outside the top 12. Was he even outside the top 12? I suppose is another question. He
Uh,
was, yeah.
uh, he was 28.
Oh, he had injured. He got injured.
Oh,
Didn't
that's in half
he?
PPR.
Yeah, he got
Yeah,
injured.
he played 14 games.
Oh, Well, yeah. So he actually did drop off a cliff last year, even in points per game,
Mm,
13.2. That's not impressive at all. But
mm,
there are games in here where he's gone
yeah.
23.3, 21, 21.5, and 21 again, and 26.4 in his first game of the season. So he has some ceiling on him, but
Yeah.
he's he's a he's an RB 3 or 4 that you play on plus matchups. I think.
Yeah. I'll give you one more name who I would absolutely avoid, and we've just spoken to him at the start of the show, Ramondre Stevenson.
Yep.
He's
Yep.
pretty much he was in the second worst offense last year. Um, he's probably got the worst offensive line, I'd say, in football, unless improvement, which I'd hope so for you, ranking dead last. Um, and I just don't love what they're going to do this year. I mean, there's nothing really there that makes me really excited about this offense. Going, oh, I need Ramondre Stevenson. Um, yeah, I wouldn't take a flyer on him at all. To be honest, I'd avoid at all costs.
Yeah, I'd let him go.
Um,
Unless of course he
yeah,
falls to like pick 100 for whatever reason, for example. Like if he drops that far, maybe, but like yeah, not interested in him at all.
well, they got the hardest schedule next year as well. So, does that turn you off?
Uh, no more than I'm already turned off from him. Yeah. Um, just on,
Yeah.
just on Gus Edwards, by the way. Hang on. Um, there were 6 games last year where he had the lion's share of snaps for the Baltimore Ravens, and in those 6 games, he averaged hang on, let me get this here, 14.1 points a game. Now, it's pretty solid for a guy that does no pass catching at all, right? That's probably, I
Mm,
imagine that's Kimani Vidal, if at all, if they even throw to their running back this year. That might not be part of their scheme, but I think if you're going
mm.
for a guy that I would back him to score in more games than not. I think he's going double digit rushing touchdowns this year, like he did last year. Um, there's again, he's a guy I'd play on matchups that I play comfortably on most matchups and most weeks, to be honest, as well.
So you're telling me the ADP of 114 is absolute gold?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think he should be in the. I keep calling it the dead zone. It's a bit harsh, but it is kind of when you compare it to the top running backs and these guys with value. But if I was allocating him value, I'd be putting him in that 70 to 90 range rather than this 115 that he's being drafted.
I would reach to get him as well. I wouldn't let anyone else get him. I would not let anyone else get him.
Yeah.
He could be a potential not league winner, but yeah, as you said, he could be between 70 and 90 in terms of overall at the end of the year. And if you're getting him at 114 currently, I would definitely take him, better. Between 90 and 100, I'd take him just to make sure. In a run first offense, I think that's gold.
Yeah, and they've got a pretty good schedule as well. Like Fantasy Pros has rated the let me find it here. The Chargers strength of schedule is 4 stars out of 5. Like I think that's a pretty good indicator that he's on for double digit touchdowns, which I think will be necessary. But I also think he's very likely to do it. Another guy I thought I'd mention, Jonathan Brooks. Now we talked about him in the rookie draft, the draft recap, I'll call it. He's coming off an ACL tear in college. That's his major mark against him. But if he wasn't coming off that ACL tear, I think we would have talked about him much earlier in the show. Jonathan Brooks, for me, long term, he should be able to handle all 3 downs for Carolina. And in the second half of this year, he could be a proper league winner if he finds his feet early. Um, the first half of the year, we don't know what his return is. We think he's going to be ready for week 1, but how rusty will he be? Like, you know, he's going to have not done any sort of preseason training in that regard. And as a rookie, that's not great. Like he's going into the NFL sight unseen for his coaches because of this. And I think that's why his ADP is so low. But he's a very good player.
Oh, look, I understand. your point, and I actually like him as a player as well. I think that's more than fair. I would let him go to someone else personally. His ADP is 95. Um, I think for 2025 onwards, I think Jonathan Brooks could be a very good player. Um, I think he's going to need some time to get back into it. Um, his only turnoff is his ACL, and the fact that he's now on the worst fantasy NFL side in the league is probably the other turnoff. And I don't really expect to get a hell of a lot better. I expect it to be improving. It shouldn't be last next year. I think Bryce Young take a step forward, but I don't also think it's going to be that much of an improvement. I think it'll still be bottom 10. It has to be bottom 10 still, doesn't it? But yeah, I really like Jonathan Brooks. I think he's one to watch for the second half of the year. I actually think he might end up on waivers at some point in the year. I think someone will lose confidence in the first few weeks and drop him. And I would put a star next to his name and watch him and see when he actually starts producing and then pick him up. But I wouldn't draft him personally. I'd let him go to someone else. But I think it's going to be a tough grind for the first 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah. Look, I suppose we've still got 2 months until we see the first regular season game. And if in those 2 months we hear nothing about Jonathan Brooks, that's a worrying sign. However, on the flip side, if we hear a lot about him,
Yeah.
then we're cooking with gas because that's a 3 down back, and he'll go immediately into that role because their running back room is bad. There is no competition. Chubba Hubba or
Yeah.
whatever his freaking name
I mean,
is not much of a threat to him.
yeah. They've got a tough schedule as well, which is a bit of a turn off.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess anyone they play is going to be hard for them because they were the worst team in it, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, I think that just about does us for running backs. I think there's some other guys in there. I'll read a couple of them out. Ezekiel Elliott, Chase Brown, if he manages to beat out Zach Boss, which we don't think he will. Kendre Miller, if he gets some sort of workload, which I personally don't think he will. Tyrone Tracy, if he gets the starting job off Devin Singletary himself. And then Jaleel McLaughlin, if the rumors are true about Javonte Williams, which I think we both think they're not, but if the rumors are true that Javonte Williams is not the starter and Jaleel McLaughlin is, then, well, that's a lot of value. But I don't think he's an NFL starter himself, Jaleel McLaughlin. But, there's some of the names there. We've talked about the really high value guys like Zamir White, Gus Edwards, you know, in that sort of 90 plus range. I've got Nick Chubb in there as well, but we're split on that one. Uh, and then, yeah, obviously you've got your big three in McCaffrey, Bijan, and Priest Hall. And then, yeah, the rest of that, there's probably maybe 10 to 12 guys that can all finish as RB1s, but for whatever reason, they all have question marks over them, barring, Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley. But yeah, I think that probably does us for running backs. We'll be back next week with wide receivers, which I can tell you now, that's going to be in 2 parts. There's no way we're getting that done in one. And yeah,
We're going to need 6 hours.
we're going to need 6 hours. That's right. Yep. So I hope you've got like a long road trip ahead of you because, yeah, you are not getting much of a break from us. Yeah. So we'll be back with wide receivers next week. Thanks for listening, and make sure you have liked and subscribed on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from, make sure to drop us a 5-star review because that'd be tops. Matt, thanks for coming on as always, and we'll catch you next week when we do the first part of wide receivers.